While most of the NFL is focused on the draft and offseason headlines, the Ravens may be quietly preparing a play that no one can ignore. And the craziest part? It involves a veteran defensive end that Ravens fans already know can dominate in this system. At the same time, there's growing tension within the AFC North because a division rival may have found a way to become a serious problem again. The combination of these two situations could have a huge impact on Baltimore's journey to the Super Bowl, and some insiders are already hinting that the Ravens front office is far from finished making changes. But before we continue, be sure to like this if you truly believe the Ravens will bring another Lombardi Trophy back to Baltimore soon. And I want all the optimistic Ravens fans to be here in the comments right now writing, in 2026, the Ravens will come back stronger than ever. Because this season has the feel of something special building behind the scenes. Now let's get directly into the biggest concern developing inside the AFC North. According to reports, Aaron Rodgers is expected to continue moving toward a return with Pittsburgh for the 2026 season. While nothing is officially signed yet, all indications suggest the Steelers believe Rodgers will be their quarterback moving forward. And Ravens fans understand exactly why this matters so much. Pittsburgh already caused Baltimore major problems last season, including that devastating Week 18 loss that crushed playoff hopes and sent the Ravens home early. So even if Rodgers is no longer the elite MVP version of himself, the reality is simple. He still gives Pittsburgh a dramatically better chance to compete than the alternatives they currently have. And honestly, when you look at the Steelers' quarterback situation behind Rodgers, it becomes obvious why they are pushing so aggressively for this reunion. Without him, their room looks extremely vulnerable. That changes the entire balance of power inside the division. Baltimore knows that winning the AFC North is never easy, especially when Pittsburgh has stability under center. Rodgers may not have had a dominant statistical season last year, but he still produced solid numbers and showed enough ability to keep defenses honest. For a Ravens team trying to reclaim control of the division, that possibility cannot be ignored. But while fans are discussing Rodgers, another story is quietly becoming even more fascinating inside Baltimore itself. There's growing discussion surrounding a possible reunion with JV and Clowney, and this is where things start getting really interesting. Ravens insider Jeff Zrebiec made it very clear that roster movement is far from over. According to him, Baltimore's front office is expected to continue making adjustments throughout the coming months. That alone should immediately get Ravens fans paying attention because when someone with deep organizational knowledge says the roster churn is still ongoing, it usually means Eric DeCosta is far from finished building this team. And honestly, bringing back Clowney would make a lot of sense for several reasons. First of all, Ravens fans already know what he can do inside this defensive system. During his previous stint in Baltimore, Clowney had arguably the best season of his career. He thrived inside the scheme, played with energy, created pressure consistently, and became a major piece of the defense. Even after leaving Baltimore, he continued producing. His season in Dallas may not have received much national attention because of the struggles around that defense, but the production was still there. He continued getting to quarterbacks, continued disrupting plays, and continued proving he still has plenty left physically. That is exactly why this conversation refuses to disappear. Baltimore desperately needed pass rush help last season. The numbers were ugly. The Ravens struggled constantly to pressure opposing quarterbacks, and the lack of consistent edge production became one of the biggest weaknesses on the entire roster. The pass rush simply failed to create enough disruption. When your leading sack producer comes from the interior defensive line instead of the edge group, that tells you everything you need to know about how serious the problem became. And while the Ravens have already added younger talent to help address that issue, there is still enormous value in adding a veteran who already understands the system and locker room culture. That's where Clowney's leadership could become just as important as his on-field production. Baltimore now has young pass rushers developing, and having someone like Clowney around could accelerate their growth tremendously. Veterans who understand positioning, preparation, and situational football often become critical pieces behind the scenes. And based on previous comments from Clowney himself, it sounds like he would absolutely welcome the opportunity to return. He openly talked about how much he enjoyed the Ravens locker room and how much he appreciated playing alongside Lamar Jackson. That matters. Players remember environments where they felt valued and successful. At the same time, another respected veteran is already returning to strengthen the defense even further. Calais Campbell's return feels incredibly important for this football team, especially considering how aggressive Eric DeCosta reportedly was in convincing him to come back. Campbell revealed that DeCosta stayed persistent and made it clear how badly Baltimore needed him. That says everything about how the organization views his value. Even at this stage of his career, Campbell remains one of the most respected and productive interior defensive linemen in football. His presence alone changes the identity of the defensive front. And now imagine adding Clowney into that mix too. Suddenly, Baltimore would have experienced leadership, improved rotational depth, stronger pass rush potential, and younger players learning from proven veterans every single day inside the facility. That combination could completely reshape the defense compared to last season's disappointing production. The biggest question now is whether Eric DeCosta believes the roster is one veteran piece away from becoming truly dangerous again. Because if the Ravens front office feels this team is ready to make a serious Super Bowl push, bringing back someone like Jadeveon Clowney feels like exactly the kind of aggressive move they could make next. The possibility of that happening is exactly why this offseason suddenly feels so critical for Baltimore. Because when you really step back and look at the AFC picture, the Ravens are right there. They are not rebuilding. They are not trying to figure out who they are. This is a football team that believes it should be competing for a Super Bowl right now, and every single move Eric DeCosta makes from this point forward is going to reflect that urgency. And honestly, one thing that keeps standing out is how much emphasis the organization is placing on veteran leadership. That's not accidental. Bringing back Calais Campbell was not simply about adding another body to the defensive line rotation. It was about restoring a tone inside the locker room. Campbell brings accountability, discipline, intensity, and experience that younger players naturally gravitate toward. The Ravens clearly believe those qualities matter more than ever after the inconsistencies that showed up last season. Now imagine combining that with a motivated Jadeveon Clowney returning to a system where he already succeeded before. That's where this becomes extremely intriguing. Because when Clowney was in Baltimore previously, Ravens fans saw a version of him that looked fully energized again. He was flying around the field, setting edges, pressuring quarterbacks, creating chaos against the run, and making offenses uncomfortable snap after snap. The fit simply worked. Sometimes certain players just belong in certain systems, and Clowney in Baltimore felt natural from the very beginning. What also makes this important is the coaching aspect surrounding the defense moving forward. There is clearly hope internally that changes to the defensive structure and leadership can help unlock more production from the pass rush unit overall. Last season's numbers were impossible to ignore. Baltimore simply did not generate enough pressure consistently, and in today's NFL, that becomes a massive problem when facing elite quarterbacks in January. The Ravens know that. The front office knows that. And the fan base definitely knows that. That's why adding pass rush depth suddenly feels less like a luxury and more like a necessity. Now, there are obviously fair questions about balancing veteran additions with younger player development. Baltimore has invested in younger edge talent, and those players need opportunities to grow. But championship caliber teams rarely rely only on potential. They mix youth with proven experience. They create competition. They create rotational depth. And maybe most importantly, they protect themselves against injuries over the course of a brutal NFL season. That's exactly why Clowney continues making sense. And let's be honest about something else too, the AFC is only getting tougher. If Pittsburgh brings back Aaron Rodgers, even at this stage of his career, the Steelers instantly become more dangerous than they would be otherwise. Cincinnati still has offensive firepower. Cleveland is always physical. And outside the division, the conference remains loaded with contenders. Baltimore cannot afford to stand still while everybody else keeps adjusting. That's probably why Jeff Zrebiec's comments about continued roster movement felt